All right, thank you everybody for joining today. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the integration between uh, Defender for Cloud and Azure Logic Apps, and how you can do some automation around that. So similar to the way that Sentinel integrates with Logic Apps and playbooks and such, you could do some of the same things in Defender. And the power here is pretty vast in that anything you can do in Logic Apps, you can trigger based on you can have Logic Apps trigger based on security alerts or recommendations or regulatory compliance alerts as well. So first, we're going to kind of go over Logic Apps in the event that don't if you're not familiar with that, because that's really the main topic here is. So Logic Apps is kind of an evolution of a couple of other products. There's a history from like the System Center platform around System Center Orchestrator and Azure Automation. And Logic Apps provides a kind of that low code, no code environment where you can design a, a workflow application with very little code involved. It's visual, it's drag and drop, it's essentially triggers and actions that can do things based on input from a data bus. So it's completely serverless. You don't have to have like BizTalk server set up on-prem anymore. So and you have a lot of access to data across pretty much all of Azure. So as platform as a service here. So the kind of the evolution of your hybrid integration platform. This kind of creates some requirements and some opportunities for converging applications and data integration. So Logic Apps here, connecting your SaaS applications. It's all serverless and being able to leverage pretty much everything in Azure, and also. Yes, I am presenting. Can everybody else see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So, you have the ability for API management. So, you can document and catalog all of that, as well as, see all, discover, manage. You can do, RBAC as far as to control permissions. You can employ DevOps. You have access to the service bus. So all of your messaging service throughout Azure, being able to connect to essentially anything there, as well as even across your cloud properties. And the messaging delivery is predictable and secure. So you also have an event grid. So this is essentially fully managed event routing. So everything is running at near real time. And if you do have on-prem, you can integrate on-prem line of business BizTalk. And then for your development, it has full IDE support. So you can do this in the Azure portal, which is what we'll cover today. You can also create Logic Apps in Visual Studio. So if you have a heavy coding background and you're comfortable there, you can do as deep into the code as you like. It's essentially all JSON based as far as defining the actions. So you can do that. You can have fully integrated DevOps because it provides monitoring of all of your previous runs, and it gives you a very rich environment for your debug. So you can actually see each and every run that the workflow has executed, and dig into each step in it and see both the input and the output of each action, right? So you can actually see the raw JSON or HTML or whatever format it happens to be in. So obviously it's all in Azure, and you may be familiar with Power Automate. So it's very similar to the way Power Automate looks. So that if you're familiar with that, then you should be pretty comfortable with Logic Apps as well. It allows you to connect your on-prem, so it is hybrid. You can it's absolutely capable of running mission critical workloads. It's got these smart integrations, so you can integrate your machine learning, cognitive services. I've built some that will integrate with AI, and you could upload a picture, and it would analyze it would see the new file arrive. It would analyze the picture and then provide a text-based description of it, right? So it's very powerful as far as just in general. Logic Apps gives you a very robust platform for building your automations and such. And of course, it's all cross cloud, so it's not just Azure. We can integrate with external clouds. External SaaS apps as well are available there for the different actions. It's as I said, it's all serverless. You're not having to stand up VMs. You're not having to stand up runbook servers or manage things like that, resources like you did with say System Center Orchestrator. So overall, it's going to give you a much better DevOps experience. It's all event driven, right? So it doesn't matter how many instances are run. You're not limited really in capacity. It's a dynamic scale. And there's a couple of different pricing models. So you can do kind of an enterprise pricing where it's kind of almost a reserve where you're paying up front, or you can pay on a consumption basis where you're paying per run. You can get faster time to market here, so you can develop this thing really really fast. And one of the things micro billing, right? So you can do per action if you want to be able to really reduce costs, right? So platform flexibility here. It's as Angelica did in the previous session, talking about Defender for IoT. So it has the capability to interact with Defender for IoT, with Defender for Cloud, for Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud Apps, everything, right? So all of those alerts, all of the actions and things that can be done, business to business, hybrid, and smart SaaS as well. So we've got well over 200 connectors out of box. So hybrid, both for in the cloud, across clouds, on-prem. We can scale this up to be however big you want. There API connections are authenticate once and reuse, and it's very simple to deploy these things out. The portal experience is incredibly easy to use, and you can also do custom connectors. So if you have REST or SOAP, you have that as well. So this enables you to very quickly and easily access data, events, and resources in app services, systems, protocols, platforms, and usually without writing much, if any, code. So it's those pre-built operations that you can kind of use as steps. So things like you may have so you have triggers. A trigger is something that is either going to run the run book like on a schedule, or it could be an event-driven trigger. It could poll, or it could be it could wait for an external trigger to initiate the workflow, and then the data that comes from that can be used throughout the workflow to initiate other actions, right? So if there aren't any connectors available, you can also use just a generic HTTP operation, or create your custom one. It's essentially a lot of them provide a proxy or a wrapper around an API, that the underlying service is using to communicate with the logic apps. So they provide you, the operations that you use there to perform all those tasks, and they're available either as a trigger or an action, right? And then each one is going to have properties you can configure. Some will have various inputs. Triggers typically are, there's not an input on them per se on the app. It's all the data comes from when the workflow is initiated. But then all the other connectors or tasks have the ability to bring info in, and then they're going to perform an action, and then they'll put information back on the data bus, such as their results, right? Some of them are going to require that you create configure a connection to kind of like the underlying service. So you kind of have to authenticate to say Office 365 or Defender for Cloud, etc. But once you authenticate, it's gonna save that credential. So again, hybrid integration. So on-prem data gateway. So if you want to do on-premises stuff, and then the whole Azure API management, and then a service bus for cloud cross-platform. So if you need to access data sources or line of business, or legacy systems that still have to be on that are on site or on-prem, you have a gateway that can and you do have some worker services there that can do that, etc. So you also do business to business enterprise messaging here. So all kinds of transactions across from one business to another, flow control, message handling, behaviors, etc. It's secure, full RBAC, full auditing, static IPs, IP constraints, regenerating access keys to keep it secure, and then DevOps. So you see all your triggered run history. You've got a monitoring view where you can actually watch the workflows execute in real time. You've got your full versioning, so you can if somebody makes a change to a workflow and it breaks, you can roll back. Your diagnostics, OMS, well, not OMS anymore, but in Visual Studio tooling as well. So the way this works, the way the workflows are put together. So like I said, it has triggers, so you can have recurrence or advanced scheduling. You can do polling, a webhook, or a request. So a request, makes the logic app an endpoint for you to call, right? Kind of gives it a webhook. Recurrence is going to fire based on a defined schedule, and then HTTP is going to poll an HTTP web endpoint. So it's got to conform to a specific triggering contract, but that's the way it's going to run. You can do an API connection. It polls kind of like an HTTP trigger, but it takes advantage of the Microsoft managed APIs. And then you can also do an HTTP webhook. So it opens an opens an endpoint, kind of like a manual trigger, but it calls out to a specific URL. And then you've got an API connection webhook. And then you also do conditions. So you use that in your triggers to define if the workflow will execute, right? So just because it gets triggered, you can still evaluate the data coming in to see if it matches a specific condition before continuing with the execution. You can also do split. So split on is set. If an array is passed, the Logic Apps engine can split that array into one Logic App instance per item. So it can give you a parallel execution as well. Actions. So you've got invoke services. So it's like managed connectors, API management, workflow, HTTP. You've got control behavior, so you do retry or run or response or condition for each kind of things. You can do message handling. So say you've got a JSON, you do something that returns a JSON payload. You can do parse JSON. You could run it through Compose, which will grab your JSON schema. And then you can parse the JSON out. You can do HTTP table creation to put it in, say an email. etc. XML, validation and such. And then you've also got some flow controls. So you've got scopes, conditions, switch case, for eaches, and untils. So you get pretty complex, right? So if you've got some programming experience, it'll help just kind of understanding the logical flow. But like I said, everything in here is kind of like drag and drop. So you also have some built-in functions like string manipulation, conversions, math, date, and then operators there to wrap your arrays or you know define various parameters, etc. So out of the box functions, to be able to manipulate workflows without having to call anything external. So there's over 50 of them. From the string manipulations to math, sets, logical operators, etc. So there's a lot of capabilities there, just in the built-in functions. So just a couple of quick patterns here. So like error handling, we have the ability to do error handling inside the workflow. So you've got a retry, you've got run afters, so you can do conditional dependencies there, and you'll get a status back. You've also got terminate, right? So if a certain thing happens, you can shunt out to a terminate action. You can also set scopes. So you can kind of encapsulate a certain set or bring back with a status, so you can get a succeeded or skipped or failed. You can also do try catch finally. So if you're familiar with like PowerShell and how that works, so you can try a scope and then come back and run and evaluate what runs, if it's successful, if it's failed, etc. And then you do a finally. So if the try scope doesn't work, you can do finally, and it'll come back afterwards, kind of as a catch-all. You also do concurrency control. So if you have so if you do be it a trigger or a get function that brings back an array of multiple items, so you don't have to run those in series. You can run them in parallel, and you can just control how many instances through that. You do explicit parallelization. You can join with run after. You can do for each loops, so those collections are handled concurrently, or you can do sequential to do control your degrees of parallelism. Also do until, so you can now do until is going to be a serial loop. So it's going to do one action until a specific thing happens. You also do scheduling. Now the scheduling doesn't really integrate so much with Defender for Cloud, but just in general logic apps, you can do just a simple scheduled workflows as well. You also do run once. Too far. So you can also do run once, where you could set up a workflow, and then like this one, for example, says when an HTTP request is received, and URL will be generated after save, and then it says what's the start time, giving a string and an option, and then maybe a delay, and then whatever your scheduled actions are, and that could be like it says there, it can instantiate millions of scheduled jobs. So the further reference there is a couple extra items for you to go look at. There's a lot of information available on Logic Apps, and a lot of samples and quick starts, etc., available on Learn. And just to kind of give you the common end here is our Security Cloud Week for partners. Don't forget that. So that'll be here in a couple of weeks. All right, so let's get out of the slide deck here for a moment. Okay, so let's take a look at Defender for Cloud. So in the Defender for Cloud dashboard here, you'll see your overall security posture, OMI, regulatory compliance, workload protections, etc. We're going to concentrate today on security alerts. So if you're setting up your own lab and you want to experiment and learn on this, I want to point out this little button up here that says sample alerts. So all of these alerts in here, you'll notice that they all have tags on them that say sample alert. So you can click sample alert, select your subscription, and then there are a number of different categories here, your cloud plans, so app services, servers, containers, virtual machines, etc. And each one of them can generate a number of sample alerts for you. So I just have sample app and sample VM here for the moment, and it gives enough, but it's going to give you your MITRE attack tactics and what your status is. So if you sorry, I had a brief moment of all right. So if we take a look here at that's not the one I wanted. Sorry. Content. There we go. So so if we take a look at one of these alerts, you'll see here, phishing content hosted on Azure Web Apps, severity high, what your time is. You can take a look at one of the things you can do is take a look at few details, and you're going to get a number of a little bit more information here, what the general URL is. Now this is a sample alert, so it doesn't have quite as much information in it as a real alert would. But you can either click down here, take action, or you can do the tab up here. So inspect resource, mitigate the threat, right? So it gives you some steps to do that, prevent future attacks, and there'd be more detailed information here if it was a real alert. But what we're going to look at here is trigger automated response. So you can click here for trigger logic app. Now I have a couple of logic apps already created. So in this particular case, we can look at just MDC alert creation, and we can, if you can right click and open a new tab or click with your center mouse button, whatever. But if you want to take a look at this logic app, this will bring you into your logic app, and we'll go through creating one from scratch here in a moment. But in your logic app, you get down here to development tools, logic app designer. This is going to give you a view of what this logic app does, and it's very it's very flowchart like. I have a trigger here when Azure Security Center alert is created or triggered. Right, there's no other information needed. Right, this is it's just a trigger. It kind of sits up there and waits for something to come in. So what this is doing is it's waiting for an alert to come in, and you'll notice it still says Azure Security Center. They haven't quite changed the names in all the different places yet. Send an email. So this is just an Outlook 365 connector. And you'll see Defender for Cloud has discovered a potential security threat in your environment. Here are the details: alert, attack, attacked resource, alert severity, etc. Okay. So, and then it'll give you a subject and the email that you're going to send it to. Importance, and you can also add additional parameters if you like. So if you want to do sensitivity or from or BCC or attachments. Okay. So you also have the ability to integrate with Teams. So you can bring a post message in a chat or channel. You can post as a flow bot. You can post as a user or even a Power Virtual agent. You can choose a channel or a chat with Flowbot or a group chat. And then you can say, for instance, I chose channel, and based on the credentials that I have set for my Teams action here, it knows what teams I have access to, right? So Contoso, Mark A, Retail. Well, I have a SOC team, and I only have one channel in my SOC team, which is general, so it's only going to populate that. But I can do the same thing here. So I could post that same information in my Teams channel for additional visibility. Okay, well, that's all great, right? So one of the other cool things here that I can do is send approval email. Okay, so I can send off an approval email here and say, to my admin, user options, approve and reject. Give it a subject. MDC has discovered potential security threat. Create incident in Sentinel. It's a question. Okay, so we're going to ask it. We're going to ask that question, and we're going to say approve or reject. So what's going to happen here is that we're going to send an email out to our admin here, right? So when the admin sees this email come into their email box, they're presented with a in-email HTML buttons, approve and reject, and they can select whichever one they want, and based on what they select, it'll come back in here and evaluate. So if the selected option is approve, that means it's true. So it's going to go down the true path, right? So it'll either be approve or reject. So if it's approved, that means it's, we'll take the true path here, and we're going to create an incident in Sentinel, right? So here's my subscription, my resource group, my workspace name, severity, title, etc. Right? So you can do all kinds of different things with that, and then I can send another email saying, here's the Sentinel incident that was created. Right? Now this one's very email heavy. You don't have to put all the emails in here, but if they choose reject, maybe they go in, they look at it, and it's maybe it's not valid, it's false positive. They can click on reject, and what this will do is it's going to go down and get the alert by ID, right? Just because it needs to it needs the alert ID for this action. So you have to go take the system alert ID and do a get alert. So I'll give it the alert ID, the provider name, the vendor name, and you can change the status. So if I reject this through email, it's going to come back and it's going to resolve my alert. Okay. All right. So let's go see what this looks like when it's running. So for testing purposes here, we'll go ahead and say run, and this will give us the opportunity to see it run. So if I go back over here to my my alert, I can go trigger a logic app. I select my MDC alert creation and say trigger. And quickly pop back over here. Oh, sorry, I disabled this one yesterday for testing and then forgot to enable it. Here we go. All right, so there we go. So it's running, and you'll see that you get the cute little check marks here, and then our send approval email. So send approval email, the actual action occurred. It's waiting for my response. So if I go over here to my email, now I've got see, it's 11:46. So here's my notice. That's the first one that came up, right? So now it's just because it's testing, it's empty, and that's fine. But then I'm going to get this is my approval email. Now, I'm not the best designer when it comes to making it pretty, but essentially you'll get this, right? So you get has discovered a potential security threat in your environment, create Sentinel incident. So if I hit approve, right, action complete, done. So I'll come back over here to my logic app, and this will update in just a moment. There it goes. So, checkbox on my send approval, check on my condition here. You notice there's 2 checks here and there's X's here, which means it came down, this side. Now, one of the cool things is like you can click on these in your run history here, and you can see what the inputs were. You can download the actual input. You can see the headers for the output. So this gives you kind of a little table view, or you can click on show raw output, which is going to give you the big JSON here, right? So for troubleshooting or development, sometimes it's nice to have that level of detail in there. And then as you go down here to send an email, you can see inputs, right? So I can see what the raw inputs were. I can see the body, and then you'll also see output. So if this, for whatever for whatever information this particular action puts on the data bus, oops, you can see that there. Okay. All right. So now what this looks like on the other side then is if I come into back into my security alerts, now you'll notice now that my phishing attempt is missing. So it's because the status changed to resolve. So I'll take this filter off here. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I did the approve, so it's still down here. So phishing content hosted on Azure Web Apps, that's still there. But if I go over to my Sentinel, which is so here's my incident in Sentinel, right? So phishing content has been phishing content hosted on Azure Web Apps, right? So I can come over here and I can see that it's created an incident in Sentinel. Okay. Now the same thing, on conversely, I can do, I can trigger that same logic app, and if I say no. Right. So that's been triggered. I come back here and see my logic app run. Right, so there it's running. So it's waiting for my approval email again. And now if I come in here for approval request, if I click on reject, it's going to go the other direction down that run. Right, so true doesn't run. So I'm going to update the alert to resolved. So then when I look at my actual security alerts now, it comes up to it resolved from there, translates to dismissed over here. So, but it comes up and it's now dismissed, right? So it's no longer an active alert. Okay, so and you can do you do a number of different things. Uh, so you can also that's pretty easy, right? So hey, I'm going to post to a Teams. I'll post to a Teams channel here. Um, and give information. I'll send an email. I can open and close alerts. You can also integrate with ServiceNow or any other ticket management system, etc. So you'll notice here's my 11:46 and my 11:50 a.m. And you can see that I've got my post here with all my data in it, right? So that's there as well. But you could do more than just setting alerts. So you can also you can actually also take remediation action. So if we take a look at this one, isolate endpoint. So yeah, it does say failed. I don't have the VM from that sample alert doesn't actually exist. So the final action is going to show up failed in here because it won't find the device. But I just want to kind of show you some of the other things that you can do. So this is very similar, right? As far as when the security alert is created or triggered, I can send an email. I'm going to run a compose action, and what I'm going to do is get the output from my trigger and determine the JSON schema. And somebody's not on mute. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and parse this JSON. So I'm going to take the input from my alert trigger. I'm going to parse the JSON out because what I need to perform my actions here is I need the Azure ID for that particular VM, right? So Now the VM's, so the VM is invalid, so the next ones will fail because it won't find the machine. But I just want to show you, what what it would look like to pull this together. So what I can do is I'll parse that JSON, and then I can do Defender for endpoint, or in here as you'll find it under Defender ATP, but it'll update the names eventually. But for now, you can do things like collect investigation package, right? So I can take this, take the Azure ID, pop it in here, and it's going to come up and say it cannot read server response because it's not there. But then I can also isolate the machine, right? So I can, if you're familiar with Defender for Endpoint, one of the capabilities is network isolation for the machine. So you can set it to isolated, and then again I can post a message in a chat or channel. Now, if you notice the for each here, what this is doing is in the event that more than one Azure ID comes back from the JSON, it will collect an investigation package and isolate each machine that's associated with this particular alert. Okay. So I just kind of wanted to show that, and we can see what go into the designer here. You can see what this looks like, on this side here. So, in your collect investigation package, there's your Azure ID, and the way this works is you'll see this dynamic content, right? So I have to have this Azure ID. Okay, so let's we got time. So let's create a new logic app here. So select your subscription, my resource group. We'll give it a name here. Oops, no underscores. There we go. All right, it's going to be in a workflow. I'm going to choose my region, and because I'm in South Central, I'll pick that. So plan type. So you have standard and consumption. So standard, that's your enterprise level serverless, with events-based scaling, networking isolation. Or you can just do consumption. So this is your entry level. So especially while you're learning, or it's going to be a low usage, you can do this, pay only as much as your workflow runs. Zone redundancy, if you want to have availability zones, you can do that as well. Now, the way this works is you create the logic app, and it's just kind of creating the definition. Okay, so go to resource. Here's my resource. So this is essentially blank, and it's gonna, when you go to resource, it's gonna bring you into the logic apps designer. Now, I mentioned earlier that there were templates. So there are a number of different templates that are available in the gallery here. So you could do things, when a message is received in a service bus queue, or you could do a recurrence, or when a new email is received, a file is added to an FTP server, and then those are just some of the common triggers. But you also have some templates here for different workflows, and it'll give you an idea of how complicated, how many actions, etc., are in here. So if you want to receive an X12 EDI document over AS2 and transform it to XML, you've got a predetermined flow to do that. A better pipeline here, or etc. So, or just a new file in SharePoint, move it to a different folder. Right? But so as many as there are here, if you go to this category and choose security, so under security right now, it's oops, sorry about that. So under security here, it is all Defender for Cloud. Right? All three of these. So you can either a new recommendation, a regulatory compliance assessment, or a threat. So this is essentially when it detects a threat is a security alert. So you can choose this, and it's going to tell you get notifications, and you say use this template. And what it's here is it's saying it's going to connect to Office 365 Outlook and Defender for Cloud. And it's going to ask you, it may ask you for credentials, right? So Defender for Cloud, it's just a Defender for Cloud alert. But Office actually has to have an account or service principles associated with. So click OK, and it's going to give you this very basic logic app. So here's your trigger. There's nothing really to do with it. And then the one simple action for sending an email. Now, based on what you want to do, you can click the little plus sign, and it'll put an action in between the alert and the email, or you click new step, and it'll place an action after the send email. So if I wanted to, post into Teams, so I have, it'll give you for use things that you've used recently. So things like Teams, and then it'll show you all the different actions that I can perform in Teams, right? So if I wanted to do an adaptive card or a feed notification, or I can get a list of the channels and chats, right? I can get messages. So the one I was using earlier was post. Post a message, post message in a chat or channel. All right, so I can do that. Choose as Flowbot. Post in a channel, and it'll sit there and dynamically update the next field to fill out based on what you choose. Right. So I'll do my SOC team. Channel ID is only one, so it's general. Okay? And then I can put in whatever message I want. Right. And now I can put this in. I can type this however I want. But if I want to put in, if I want to put info from the alert, what I can do is click here on see more. Usually it pre-populates, but if it doesn't, you can just click on see more. And I can say, I can provide things like the alert display name, right? And maybe I'll put in alert and alert display name, right? And you can kind of see what this looks like in here. It kind of pre-populates it for you, right? So alert name, attacked resource, alert severity. And now these are little entities, but you can also copy and paste, right? So if I just wanted to duplicate the email in my Teams message, I can just copy and paste, right? So very simple. Now you can do more things. You can obviously do more than that. You can do graph, right? So you can do graph security. You can create subscriptions. You can, get alert IDs. Any number of things with graph. Or you can do Defender. So it says Microsoft Defender ATP. This is Defender for endpoint, right? So I can do things like collect my investigation package. I can isolate the machine. I can unisolate the machine. I can run an antivirus scan on it, right? So now you have to have the ID of the machine to scan, and this doesn't necessarily. That's where that JSON those JSON actions came in. But then if I pull this in, I realize, oh, gee, I've got to get the ID of this machine, so I can add one in here. Well, I know I'm going to have to get the JSON template or the schema, so I can run a compose, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the body of the alert. Oh, sorry, not the body. I want the entities. So the entities list, when you once you run it, like if I go to the run history, you can tell where that you can see that raw output and identify what section it's in. So I'm going to do compose here on entities, and then I can do parse JSON. So now the trick here is that I'm going to the parse JSON is actually going to be the entities from the alert. Okay, you're not actually going to take anything directly from the compose. you're going to take it from you're going to take the info from the alert here, but you have to get the schema so that the parse JSON knows how to parse it. So you have to use sample payload to generate schema. So what you can do is you can put something temporary in there, and it's gonna it doesn't have to be real for this run, but you're going to save it. Yeah, okay. Let's see if let me leave it blank. All right. So what we'll do is we'll delete the parse JSON, leave it at compose. We'll save it. Oh, there you go. That should save. Okay, so that's now saved. So what I'll do is I'll do run trigger, and I'll come back over to one of my security alerts. It doesn't really matter, which security alert it is, as long as it's one that would contain uh, an endpoint. So the easiest way to do this is one that takes a sample VM here. So I can take action over here to trigger logic app. Hopefully it'll refresh quick enough. It did. So we'll choose our Rockstar logic app and trigger that. So we should see that run. Okay. So what we want is from this compose, right? We want the output here. Okay. So we just need to copy that output. We'll go back over to designer. Now we can put in our parse JSON. This is going to be the entities item from our alert. And now we're going to use sample payload to generate the schema. Okay. So now we can go through and do our, say we want to do Defender and run an antivirus scan. So we have to have the ID, but now you'll notice I've got Azure ID. So if we look at the, say if we go look at the output of this the last run here, I'll show you what that JSON, what the actual output looks like. So if we take a look here and look at raw outputs, so what we're looking at is this is what comes into the logic app from Defender for Cloud, and you're looking for, or this one didn't. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Gotta have this one because it's got a endpoint in it. All right. So the output of the alert. So we're looking. What we need is this Azure ID, right, for this sample virtual machine. So we need to get this Azure ID out of this and into our logic app, into our Defender for Endpoint. So that's what this parse JSON does. Is it parses out that JSON payload and then gives us all of the individual data points here. So now we can do Azure ID, and it realizes that this could be a multiple, have multiple values. So it's going to automatically put it in a for each loop, right? So that it does this for each Azure ID that comes through. We can you have to put in a sample comment, and then tell it what kind of scan you want to perform, a quick or a full, right? So we might as well do a full scan. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. So now we can come back and look for Uh, it doesn't even, we built it kind of based on this one, but it could be, we can actually run this on any of these that have, an endpoint associated. So it doesn't even matter that you created it for that one. You can go through and say, okay, trigger automated response and choose my Rockstar Logic app, right? And trigger that off. So that'll trigger off right there. So I know this will run. It'll fail here at the end, but um, oh, I didn't tell it to actually trigger today. Right. Now I know that's going to fail because that endpoint doesn't exist. But I am getting my team. I can hear the alerts playing in my speakers. I'm getting my email. There's my little red dot. For this particular one, and it's also doing the Teams channel post. Okay. And now you can do the same thing with as far as the Defender for Cloud. You can do the same thing for the um, security recommendations as well as your regulatory compliance. But it's a lot harder to demo because you can't. It's takes a while to get one of these to actually trigger to show up. So that's why I just concentrate on the security alerts. But it's essentially the same thing here. So if we look at regulatory compliance, I don't have one on there. Recommendations. So if we take a look at recommendations, if it's a new recommendation, you can go in here and then you have trigger logic app if it's a valid one, right? So trigger logic app is down there as well. Okay. Any questions so far? I didn't see any in the chat. All right, go forth and have fun. There are a lot of really cool samples out there. And enjoy logic apps. Not only with Defender for Cloud, but with other things in your environment. And that's about all I have.